Hello friends, this is CA Karun Nagpal and in this video we are going to talk about equity valuation. Friends, as you all understand that the valuation is the process to determine the intrinsic value of an asset or a business. So the purpose of equity valuation is to determine the value of a business or the value towards the equity shareholders or the value of the share. So there are number of models which help us to determine the value of the equity. And in this video, we are going to study all those models which are used for the equity valuation. So friends, here are the contents of today's video and I hope you understand the valuation approach. If you do not, please do watch my other video on valuation approaches. There are three approach: cost, income and market approach. And we would be using the income approach and market approach in some of these models we are going to discuss today. So capitalization method is one of the income approach method which come under the absolute valuation method. So in this method we capitalize the income and we arrive at the value of the company. Then friends, we will talk about the dividend discount model. So by discounting the dividend we arrive at the value of the company. There are models which are Gordon growth model that is very popular, and we have a two-stage dividend discount model. So Gordon growth model have some limitation, that is why two-stage dividend model is used. Then friends, we will talk about the relative valuation method. So there are two type of approaches: the absolute valuation and the relative valuation. In absolute valuation, we rely on our own inputs, whereas in relative valuation, we rely on the market data such as PE multiple, EBITDA multiple, price to book value multiple, enterprise value to EBITDA multiple. Then friends, we will talk about DCF valuation approach, wherein we will talk about FCFE, FCFF, the weighted average cost of capital and the cost of debt equity, and we will also talk about the CAPM model and beta. Friends, let us start with the capitalization method. Income capitalization method is an absolute valuation method that estimate the intrinsic value, that the intrinsic value is the real worth of an organization. And using this approach, the income capitalization approach, we have to consider the net operating income and we have to disregard what other firms are doing outside our organization. So before that, before understanding the capitalization approach in detail, we should understand the intrinsic value. What is intrinsic value? Friends, intrinsic value is the worth of an asset that is arrived by using your own model or technique rather than looking at the market prices. For example, a stock is listed on the stock exchange and the market price is derived by the sentiments of the investors. There may be some other factors, the corporate governance and all. So the market price may not depict the real value, real worth of an asset. So you have to use your own models or own techniques to arrive at the real worth of an asset, that is called intrinsic value. Intrinsic value, friends, is subjective term based upon your emphasis. It may vary. If you are looking for a future earning potential rather than the corporate governance, in that case, the valuation may differ. So, depending upon the investor to investor, some prefer the corporate governance over the earning potential or the earning of the organization. To elaborate, friends, let me share a very good example with you. So here Mr. X is a promoter and founder of XYZ Builders and Developers. And his company has a long history of steady growth and has a very strong fundamental. You can look at the graph and notice that the earning is growing continuously. And suddenly in the year 2020, Mr. X got convicted under the Post law, and due to that, since he was a promoter and founder, his image got tarnished and he came into the limelight and the share of his company fell down, not because of the intrinsic value, but because of the sentiments attached to the promoter or the misconduct or the conviction of the promoter, so share price fell down. However, the intrinsic value will be sound because company has a steady history of growth. So friends, in this case, the investor have the opportunity to invest in this stock because the promoter may step down and some other may come into his place, and since we have a very good steady growth, so the share price will definitely go up in future. So this is the difference between the market price and the intrinsic value. I hope you are able to relate now. So friends, let's go back to the capitalization approach. We were discussing about the computing the market value. Here the net operating income, we have to take the net operating income and we have to divide it by the capitalization rate. So this method is particularly used in computation of value of the income generating asset or income generating business. In case you are a growth company and you are the at the initial stage, you may not be earning and you may not be generating revenue. In that case, this method will not work. So capitalization rate is the indirect measure for how fast a company would be able to recover the investment. The capitalization rate is inversely proportional with the payback periods. Friends, let's take another example on capitalization approach. A building is producing 10 crore of positive net operating income. That is the leftover amount after allocating the fixed cost, variable cost from the gross income. And the capitalization rate is estimated to be 10%. Then the value of the building would be 10 CR divided by 10%, which is the capitalization rate, will be 100 CR. So capitalization rate is an indirect measure of how fast an investment will pay. For example, in this case, if we reduce the capitalization rate to 5%, then the value of the company would go high. That means you will be able to recover your investment in more time. In case of 5% capitalization rate, payback period will come out to be 20 years. You will recover your investment in 20 years. If we increase the capitalization rate, lower will be the payback period. So they are inversely proportional. And we can also compute the capitalization rate. Suppose we have purchased a building recently and we know that this is the amount of revenue this building will be able to generate. In that case, what we will do, we will take the income of the company divided by the investment will be the capitalization rate. Then friends, moving further towards dividend discount model. So we have Gordon growth model, which is very popular, and it has some limitation. That is why another model is used for growth companies, that is two-stage dividend model. Let us discuss them in detail. Gordon growth model. So Gordon growth model is used to determine again the intrinsic value of a stock based upon future dividend, future earning. And here we have the growth as well. So what we will do, we will compute the expected dividend for next year divided by the cost of equity minus the growth rate. So that is pretty easy. I hope you are able to understand. So next year dividend divided by the rate of return minus growth rate. Then friends, we have an example here. The company stock is trading at 135 and the required rate of return is 10% and 5% dividend is expected for next year. The growth rate is 6%. So value would come out to be 5 divided by the rate of return minus the growth rate. So 10 minus 6, which will be 4%. So 5 divided by 4% will be 125. So here the value which we have arrived is 125, which is the intrinsic value. However, the stock is trading at 135, which means it is overpriced, overvalued. So as per the Gordon growth model, this stock is overpriced. Friends, that is very simple method to use, but it has some limitations. So what are those limitations? Since we have the growth rate as a constant figure, so this seems not practical because there may be fluctuations in the market, and investor sentiments may go up and high, and there may be during the life cycle of a company there may be various factors which may impact the growth. So this does not seem practical. Then friends, in case the growth rate is higher than the cost of equity, so that would be applicable in case of a growth company where the company has recently started. So for the initial years, like technology company, they are very aggressive, and unless they become stable. So in that case also this model will not work. As I said, that this model ignores the market competition and the investor sentiments, and the company to have a constant growth is very rare. So there may be unexpected financial difficulties, some liquidity issue may happen, so growth may not sustain for such a long period. And this model is used particularly for the stable companies which are at a matured stage. So this model will be helpful. Then friends, we have another model which is two-stage dividend discount model. Under the stage one, dividend grows at a constant rate for a set of time, maybe for 3 years, 5 years. And in stage two, the dividend is assumed to grow at a different growth rate. So second part growth rate may be sustainable, and this stage 2 value is also known as terminal value. The two-stage model is used to determine the intrinsic value of a company which is undergoing rapid expansion. So the company which has started, or the growth companies, the technology companies who are growing the rapid expansion, this model may be used. And the newer company who have proven their staying power but are still in the initial stages, they may also use this model. And the first stage of this two-stage model is assumed to be aggressive and reflecting the changes. Maybe there may not be very good cash flows in the first few years because you are just investing and making the platform for you to perform in future. While the second stage assumes a lower or more sustainable rate of dividend growth. So friends, let us understand the formula of two-stage dividend discount model. Here is the formula, friends. The formula looks quite complicated, but that is pretty easy. If you look at D1, D1 is the expected dividend for next year, and we have discounted it to arrive at the present value of using the discount rate. And D1 plus 1 plus G. So we have added the growth rate for the G1. G1 is the stage 1 growth rate. We have added to the first year dividend, and then we have discounted to arrive at the present value. Similarly, we do it for till n years, maybe for first 3, 5 or 7, whatever, and we will discount accordingly. And the second stage, in the second stage, the dividend for nth year, we will add the growth rate and we will divide it by rate of return minus growth rate for that period. So this is pretty similar to the Gordon growth model. And once we arrive at this number, we will again discount it to arrive at the present value. So we will discount using the expected rate of return. So this is the stage 1 and the stage 2. D1 here, as I said, represent the dividend which is expected 1 year from now. G1 is the dividend growth rate for stage 1. G2 is the dividend growth rate for stage 2. And R represent the expected rate of return. N is the number of years. And the growth rate in stage 1 for different year may also be different. For example, in year 1, the growth rate may be different from year 2, 3, 4. And unless the growth rate becomes stable, we cannot come into the stage 2. So in the stage 2, we assume that the growth rate will remain stable. And stage 2, friends, is also called the terminal value, which represent the present value at the end of explicit forecast period for all the subsequent cash flows till the infinite life of the company. Friends, let us understand this with the help of an example. So friends, let us understand the two-stage dividend discount model with the help of an example. Here we have current FCFF per share of 1 rupee and the forecast 8% for 1 to 3 years, 7% growth rate for year 4, 6.5% growth rate for year 5 and 6% in year 6. Thereafter 4% from 7th year onwards, and other information, beta is also given 1.6, risk free rate is 3%. We will use them when we compute the cost of equity using CAPM, and the equity risk premium, which is market risk premium minus risk free rate, given 5%. Outstanding share 100 lakh, tax rate is given, interest expense is given. So friends, here we have year 1 to 7, and first year we have the earning per share FCFE, which is 1, that is given, and from in year 0 it is 1, year 1 it will have 8% growth. For the 3 years as given in the question, 1 to 3 year, it will have 8% growth. Then for year 4 7% growth, year 5 6.5, and year 6 6%, and 4% till perpetuity. So now what we will do, till year 6 we will compute the growth rate, and in year 7 we will compute the terminal value using the growth rate at 4%. So FCFE, we will add the growth rate like this. In previous year FEFE we will add the growth rate, so this will have become the FCFE. Present value factor at 11%. 11% we have computed using CAPM. I'll let you know once we are done with CAPM. So using this discount rate, we have the arrived at these present value factors, and we will compute the present value for the FCFE for these 6 years. So this will become the stage 1 in our case. And for stage 2, the terminal value, what we will do, we will compute the terminal value by using the Gordon growth model formula. So we have the FCFE divided by the rate of return minus the growth rate 4%. So FCFE 1.583 divided by 11 minus 4%, which will be 22. So we will again discount these because this is at 7th year, and we will discount, and we will arrive at the present value for our terminal value, which will be stage 2. So stage 1 will be sum of year 1 to 6 present value, and stage 2 will be 7th year terminal value. So this will become the value of equity. Moving further, friends, we have the relative valuation model. So here we will talk about the PE ratio, EBITDA, price to book value, enterprise to EBITDA. Friends, relative valuation multiples are divided in two parts: the equity multiples and the enterprise value multiples. So entity multiples are PE ratio, market price divided by earning per share, market price divided by book value ratio. Here we compute the market capitalization divided by the book value of the assets. And then we have market price to sales ratio. Then friends, enterprise value multiples are enterprise value to sales or enterprise value to EBITDA multiple. So let us, friends, discuss all of them in detail. First one is PE ratio, which is very common. Whosoever deal in stock market is aware of in his daily life, use the PE ratio. The formula for PE ratio is market price per share divided by earning per share, or market capitalization divided by earning. You can also compute that way. Let us take an example here. We have the market price for company A and company B. That is same. EPS for company A is 8 and for company B is 4. So the PE ratio will be market price divided by earning per share, which come out to be 3 for company A and 6 for company B. So PE ratio is high for company B. That means for company B, for every rupee of earning, they have to invest 6 rupees. Whereas for company A, for every rupee of earning, they have to invest just 3. So lower PE ratio means company is viable, you can invest. P ratio relates to company share price to its earning per share. High P ratio could mean that the company stock is overvalued. So if P ratio is higher, as you can see in case of company B, that means either the company stock is overvalued or the investor are expecting that this company may have higher growth rate in future. Maybe this company is at early stage or a growth company, and they are expecting that this company may have the potential to have the higher earning in future. Company that have no earning or a loss making company do not have PE ratio because there is no earning per share. So we will have to look for some other multiple or some other model to arrive at the valuation. There are two kind of PE ratio. First one is the forward looking PE ratio and the second one is trailing PE ratio, which is commonly used the market price per share divided by earning per share. So earning per share is for the previous 12 months and forward looking is the future expected earning. So market price per share divided by the future earning of the company, the expected earning for next year. So these two type of PE ratios are commonly used in stock market. Then friends, moving further, price to book value multiple. So again here we will take market price per share divided by book value per share, and the book value is the net asset value of all tangible assets. So we will take total assets, deduct intangible assets, trademark and goodwill, and we deduct liabilities to arrive at the net tangible assets, and we divide market price by the net tangible assets to arrive at the price to book value ratio. Price to book value ratio measure the market valuation of a company relative to its book value. Market value of the equity is typically, in general, market price is higher, but in case market price is less than the book value net tangible asset, that means you should invest and the company is undervalued. For the companies who have a major investment in intangible or are growth companies, technology companies, they may have less tangible assets and higher market capitalization, market price. So this ratio may be higher for those companies, and this ratio under 1 is typically considered solid, because if it is less than 1, that means your net tangible asset is more than market price. That means you should immediately go and invest in the share. Then friends, we have price to sales ratio, price to sales multiple, market price per share divided by sales per share, or we can also take the market capitalization divided by the previous year annual revenue. This ratio compare the market price with the turnover of the company. The price to sales ratio show that how much the investors are willing to pay per rupee of sales. Low ratio could imply that stock is undervalued, while the ratio is higher, that indicate the stock is overvalued. And this ratio do not take into account whether the company is profit making or it has a future earning potential. For that we will have to look for other ratios, and this ratio is relevant when it is used to compare the companies in the same industry. Then friends, we have enterprise value to sales. Here we will take the entire value of the enterprise rather than the value of equity. Market capitalization plus debenture or preference share, minority interest if they are also there, less cash and cash equivalents. So that will be the enterprise value divided by the sales. EV to sales, we also call it as. This ratio measure how much it would cost to purchase a company value in terms of sale. Lower EV to sales multiple indicate that the company is attractive because sales are high, denominator is higher. That means company is relatively undervalued, and this measurement is considered more accurate than price to sales, because there we are just taking into account the market capitalization, market value per share. Here we are taking the value of the entire company, whether it is debt or preference share. Then friends, we have enterprise value to EBITDA multiple. Here also market capitalization, we will add the debenture, preference share, minority interest, and deduct the cash or cash equivalents divided by earning before interest, tax, dividend and amortization. Friend, this multiple is also known as EV to EBITDA multiple, This ratio is used to determine the value of the company, and unlike the EV to sales, this take into account the earning potential of the company and the enterprise value, also take into account the debt and the preference share cash levels in addition to the stock price. Higher EV to EBITDA multiple are expected in high growth industry. So company if is at an initial stage and is not generating that much revenue, but it has a potential, so it would have a high EV to EBITDA multiple. Friends, that was all about a relative valuation multiple. Moving further, we have a discounted cash flow technique, which is the most commonly used. And we will talk about the free cash flow to fund, free cash flow to equity, and the cost of capital to discount these cash flows. In case of FCFF, we use weighted average cost of capital. For FCFE, we use cost of equity, and how we arrive at the cost of equity using the CAPM model. Free cash flow to firm. Friends, free cash flow to firm, FCFF, is the cash available to all the investors of the firm, whether it is shareholders, debenture holders, preference shareholders. So the computation of FCFF, if you have the profit and loss statement, so we will start from the net profit, we will add depreciation or amortization, we will add back the interest because interest gets deducted from the net profit, but we will take the tax benefit of the interest. So net of tax, we will add back the interest. Then we will subtract the net capital expenditure and the working capital changes to arrive at the FCFF for the firm. Or alternatively, if we start from EBIT, earning before interest and tax, so we will have to make it net of tax, then add the debenture amortization, less net capital expenditure and less working capital changes. Once we have arrived at FCFF, we will discount these FCFF using the weighted average cost of capital to arrive at the value of the firm. Now friends, let us understand what is FCFE, that is free cash flow to equity. As the name suggests, this is the cash available to the equity shareholders after payment of interest to the debenture holders. So the formula here, if we start from profit after tax, we will not add back the interest here because we do not need interest in free cash flow to equity. So profit after tax, then we will add back depreciation and amortization, and then we will deduct net capital expenditure, deduct the net working capital changes, and we will add back the net borrowings. Alternatively, if we already have the FCFF, then we will, from the FCFF, we will deduct the interest and add back the net borrowings. Interest would be net of tax. And once we arrived at FCFE, this FCFE is discounted using the cost of equity because this is the cash available to the equity holders, and using the cost of equity we discount these cash flows to arrive at the value for the equity shareholders. And there are various methods to arrive at the cost of equity. Most commonly used is CAPM, capital asset pricing model. Now friends, let us understand the weighted average cost of capital. Weighted average cost of capital formula, as you can see, is the equity multiplied by cost of equity plus preference shareholders, preference multiplied by cost of preference shareholders, then debenture holders, long-term debt multiplied by the cost of debt. Cost of debt would be 1 minus T because we get the tax benefit, and divided by the market value of equity, preference and debt. So this is here we have taken the weight for the equity, preference and debenture and computed the WACC. And the weight are based on the market value, not the book value of the equity or debentures. Weighted average cost of capital incorporate all sorts of companies' capital, including the common stock, preferred stock, bonds, or other long-term debt, and is commonly used as a discount rate for FCFF analysis. When we do the DCF analysis, WACC is used. Cost of debt friend, the cost that company bear in raising and managing the fund. So the interest which is to be paid to the debenture holders divided by the market value of the debt is the cost of debt. Similarly, cost of preference share is the dividend which we have to pay to the preference shareholder divided by the market price per preference share. Then cost of equity, friends, we use the CAPM model to arrive at the cost of equity, and CAPM model says cost of equity is equal to risk-free rate plus beta into the risk premium. Risk premium is market rate of return minus risk-free rate of return. Friends, let us understand the CAPM model in detail. Cost of equity is the return that a company requires for an investment or a project, which is the expected rate of return. So in case you have invested in FD, say for example, you will get a return that is risk free. You are not taking any risk. When you are taking the risk, your expectation will go high. You will seek higher return because the risk is high in equity. Or in case you invest in debenture, you will get a fixed coupon. So risk is low, so your expectation will be low. Generally, the rate of return on equity is higher than the debenture or preference shareholder. So that is expected rate of return which the investor is willing to get from that investment. CAPM model is the commonly used model. Alternatively, we can also use the dividend capitalization model to arrive at the cost of equity, but CAPM is the popular one. And the cost of equity under CAPM is equal to risk-free rate of return, RF, denoted by RF, plus beta multiplied by market rate of return, RM, minus risk-free rate of return, RF. So here you can look at the formula. KE is equal to risk-free rate plus beta into RM minus RF. Risk-free rate of return, friends, is the rate of return which you get from the treasury security where you have negligible or no risk. Market rate of return is the average rate which is generally presumed to be the average of past 10 years you are getting on particular type of investment. And friends, beta is the measure of volatility in the individual stock price as compared to the systematic risk of the market. So risk has been divided into two parts, systematic and unsystematic risk. Systematic is the industry risk, whereas the unsystematic risk is your own entity's risk, which can be diversified by your capital structure or other measures. Coming back to our example, once again, we already computed the market value of equity. Then friends, we have the other information which is available. We can compute the cost of equity using CAPM. 3% is the risk-free rate of return, and the risk premium RM minus RF is equal to 5%, and the beta is also given, which is 1.6%, and our cost of equity will come out to be 11%. Then friends, equity value using the market value of equity, because for WSEC we need the market weights. So value of equity would be 17.48 multiplied by the number of shares, equity share outstanding. Then since the debt is not given in the question, so we assume that the 10% is the interest rate for debt. So we have assumed that 300 is the value of debt. So total value of the firm would be 2000, and while computing WSEC, we have the market value of equity and the cost of equity, and similarly for debt and the cost of debt. So what we will do, friends, here we will compute the weighted average for equity and debt, and then we will total this divided by the market value. So it will come out to be 10.85%. I hope I made you clear. You can download this file. I'll share the link in the description. Friends, let us understand beta in detail. So beta, as I said, is a measure of volatility of a stock compared to the systematic risk of the entire market. So systematic risk which cannot be avoided, in case there is a downfall in the industry, downfall in the market, you will have to bear that. So formula for beta is covariance of the return on individual stock and the market return divided by the variance of market return. So if beta, we assume the beta of the market to be 1, in case your company's beta is also 1, that means your stock is strongly correlated with the market and will have no impact other than the market. It will move with the market and it will not add any risk to your portfolio, and at the same time it will not have any likelihood of excess return because it will flow with the market. If the beta is less than 1, that means the security is less volatile. That means if the market moves 1 point, so your stock will move up or down less than 1 point. So some of the bonds, some of the stocks, such as the utility stock, have lower beta because there is slow market, slow growth in those bonds. Beta, where beta is higher than 1, that means security price will move more than the market. So in case your beta is 1.2 and your market has gone 1 point up, your beta, your company will move 1.2 times. So in this case, stock is presumed to be more volatile. So some of the companies, the growth companies, the companies who are into technology, have the higher beta. And the negative beta, stock which is inversely correlated with the market. In case market is going high, so stock will go down and vice versa. In this case, the stock will move in the opposite direction. So some of the industry like gold mining have the negative beta. Friends, this was all about the equity valuation models. I would be coming up more interesting video. Till then, stay tuned and have a good day.